I chose that hymn was to remind us of the beauty of this relationship with God in face of the darkness that we see in these two chapters this evening. Thus far, we have looked at the commissioning, chapters 1 through 3, which give us a picture of God's beauty, as bizarre as some of that vision is. Still, the whole issue there is the wonder and the beauty and the complexity of who God is. How simplistic the idols are. To worship a bull calf or to worship Yahweh. His sovereignty, He is the absolute Lord of the world, and His universal mobility. One of the things that vision keeps stressing is whichever way they wanted to go, they could go without turning around. And the wheel within the wheel that's turning. Daniel Block, who wrote one of the major commentaries on Ezekiel, refers to this as God's chariot. The four creatures with their wings full of eyes, the wheels full of eyes, and above it all is that platform, and on that is the throne, and above the throne is one who is with the similarity of the likeness of a man. So that's the commissioning. And you remember that Ezekiel went home and was dumbfounded for a week. And then God said to him, look, you're the watchman. The watchman doesn't have to get people to respond, but he does have to warn them. And Ezekiel says, yes, sir. And so we see then in chapters 4 through 11 what I'm calling the inevitability of judgment. In chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7, we see the refusal to obey Yahweh and instead the embrace of abominations. Then in 2 weeks, we're going to start into the temple vision, which is chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11, where Ezekiel sees what is really going on in the temple. And how that temple, far from being the guarantee of the people's deliverance, is in fact the guarantee of their judgment. And we see throughout those chapters the progressive withdrawal of God from His temple. One of the most haunting pictures in all the Bible. So, that's where we are. This evening, we're looking at chapters 6 and 7. Now, in chapter 5, they are judged because of the temple. Their worship in the temple is corrupted. Now, in chapters 6 and 7, the focus of judgment moves. What are they being judged for here? Their idolatry. They're being judged for the abomination of idolatry. The NIV will say detestable practices. But I think that abominations does not merely mean detestable practices. As I've said to you before, it is really that which is against creation. Now, I ask you at one point, how many times does abomination appear in these two chapters? Or detestable practices? What did you come up with? 7 times. 7 times in 2 chapters. Now, why do you think you start with the temple and then come to idolatry? What's going on there? There's a sense in which, having defiled the sanctuary, now we move out of the sanctuary. At least in the sanctuary, we could claim we were worshiping Yahweh. Now, out on the mountains, and by the way, just to let you know here, we're going to have another oracle to the mountains later on in the blessing part of the book. We're going to see watchmen again in the blessing part of the book. There are a number of places where we have parallels. And again, this seems to speak to the probable literary creation of the book, that it was given some thought in terms of how the book is structured. But you've moved now bad enough to worship Yahweh in corrupt ways. Now you've moved out to the worship of the world. Now, why is an idol seen to be an abomination? I mean, it's very natural. It's very much a part of creation. Why should it be called an abomination? Why is it against creation? It's not alive, that's for sure, yes. It is placed over the Creator. It is the worship of what should be used. God did not intend that we should worship the world. God did not intend that we should worship things or objects. He intended that we should worship Him.
The irony of God creating man, and yet man is creating idols.
Exactly. Exactly. God, maybe we've got a darker marker here, let's see. God created us in His image. Now, what have we done? We humans have created God in our image. And why are we commanded not to make images? Who is the image of God? Don't you dare try to make me in your image. I have an image. The eternal Son. And He comes to take on human image. It's all tied up together. When I make God in my image, I'm setting myself up to miss the image. I'm setting myself up to miss Jesus. And there it is. There it is. Now, what happens when we make the creation ultimate? See, that's what's going on in the end. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't care whether you're talking about an African Aborigine or a modern agnostic scientist. This world is all there is. This world is ultimate. There is nothing beyond this world. Now again, it's tied right into the first two commandments. You shall have no other God before me. There's only one of me. Why? Because I transcend the world. You cannot make me in the shape of anything in this world. Now, there are only 3 monotheistic religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And they all get it from one single source. In the entire world, there's only one place that has maintained from beginning to end, there is only one God. Where in the world did they get that? Those Jews are really bright. No, ask the Jews. Bright? No, we were knuckleheads. God dragged us kicking and screaming into this understanding of Him. We didn't want one God, we wanted lots of gods. And He said no. How many religions are there in the world that will not permit the making of images? Same 3. Same single source. Why can't you make an image of God? Because God is not this world. So, what happens when you make this world ultimate? What happens? Boy, you're pretty tongue-tied tonight.
Well, a number of things happen, but one is you certainly limit God.
Okay. Does the world have a purpose? No. Just look around you today, in our culture. Miss USA killed herself yesterday. She said, I have now become 30, and I am determined to find joy and purpose in my life apart from anybody else. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. If this world is ultimate, there's no purpose in your existence. You're a blob of protoplasm that is the result of an accidental crash between a sperm and an egg. What else when we make this world ultimate?
Those images, we put our identity on them. So it makes it impossible for us to detach ourselves from the world.
Yes, my identity is in what I worship. So, in this world, what do you have to have? Power. People are going to walk on you if you're not careful. And what's that power for? Control? Yes. And what is one of the major sources of power in our lives? Money. Money. Wealth. Possessions. And why do we want those so badly? Because they promise us security. And we need security. Oh, how we need security. This is a scary world. So give me boodles of money to make myself secure and in the process also comfortable. And filled with pleasure. I had a shot in my knee today, and as it was going on, the doctor said, "Are we having fun yet?" I didn't hit him, but I was tempted. Fun! Fun! This is what happens to us. And we are at the mercy of the world. It determines our attitude and our outlook. And God says, it's an abomination. Now, what I'm wanting to say here is, now, when we worship the world, it is indeed going to lead us into some detestable practices. Obviously, you cannot say, my dear children, that there are only two genders. No, no. One of the last counts I saw was 16 possible genders. You can't say that there's any purpose. You can't say that there's any direction. And in the process, we become all alone. I'm God. Get out of my way. My goals are all that matter. There are no eternal goals. There is no direction for my life. I determine the direction. And if you get in my way, you're going to be in big trouble. God says, abomination. That's not the way I made you. I made you to find a purpose. And what is that purpose? I'd like to say, in line with the hymn we sang last week, well, it's to be like Jesus. Not to make God in our image, but for us to be made in His image. A purpose. And therefore, all of the rest of this. Is there power? Yes. But it is power that is a gift. And it is power to overcome the world and its temptations. It is power to live triumphantly, whatever the world may throw at us. And in becoming like Jesus, we have fellowship with Him and fellowship with one another. Belonging. You're not in competition with me. I'm not in competition with you. We are all focusing on Jesus and thus on one another. Well, I could spend a long time here, but why does God see idolatry as an abomination? Because it is the worship of the world, and in the worship of the world, we come to utter frustration. And something you want to say here? Further comments?
If we love the world, I think we hate God. If we love God, we hate the world because we see where the destruction is.
Yes.
God, we have hope.
Yes. If we love God, we hate the world. Now, this is what we're talking about of the world. We don't hate creation. We don't hate persons who are in the world, but we hate this kind of an attitude. So, John, in his gospel and in his letters, is very, very strong on this argument. You cannot love God and the world. Mel?
Yeah, you see today so much preserve the world,
Oh, yes.
the Green Revolution.
Yes. Yes.
As Christians, we are to be stewards,
Yes.
but this save the world is because this is all we've got. There's
Yeah.
nothing else.
I'm sure it's partly jealousy on my part. But I see these 85-year-old men who are doing exercises and all this sort of thing. And I think, for what? For what? Put it off, put it off, put it off. Well, I'm not eager to go to heaven. On the other hand, I'm not afraid of going to heaven. That's where I'm headed.
That's what Paul taught.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In one sense, he was ready. He wanted to be with the Lord. He really
Yep.
didn't want to stay.
Yep.
But in the other sense, it was okay if the Lord needed him to
Yep.
still do his work.
Yep. Yep. I always,
For what, John? We're the temple.
yes.
Spirit.
Yes.
Respect for the temple.
Yes.
If it's for anything
Yes.
else, it's no good. It's all
Yes.
ego.
Yes. 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 All of you get that? It's because we are his temple and we take care of the temple because it's his temple. If it's anything else, it's ego. Well said. Well said. Okay, so abomination all the way through here. Twice, I think, in chapter 6, and then 5 times in chapter 7. The other phrase that shows up, we've talked about this in the past, is, then you will know that I am the Lord. How many times does that show up? Again, 7. Then you will know I am the Lord. Let's look at this. First one that I have marked is in chapter 6, verse 7. When will they know he is the Lord? When the slain fall among you. Okay? The next one that I have is in verse 10. Why will they know he is the Lord? Yes, and what will they do in verse 9? They will loathe themselves for the evil they've done, for all their abominations. And loathing themselves, they will know he is the Lord. Okay? Where's the next one? Verse 13. And once again, they will know I'm the Lord when what? Their people lie slain among their idols. The idols that could not help them. The next one I see is in 14. Well, will they know he's the Lord there? When he stretches out his hand and makes the land what? Desolate. Desolate. So your idols are going to give you power. Your idols are going to give you abundance. Your idols are going to give you long life. When your idols have utterly failed you. When the people lie slain among their idols. When the land is desolate. You'll know. Now, again, before we go on, you'll know what? What does it say? That I am the Lord. Now, I think most of you have heard me go through this several times. Originally, when the Bible was first written, it was written only in consonants. Whether, presumably, the people had it memorized, and so the consonants were just a help. But even today, Israeli newspapers are written only in consonants because it's too expensive to print the vowel signs around the consonants, which is what they've done. So it's pretty easy in context. I mean, you look at that. Cat, cut, cute, acute. But in the context of the sentence, it's amazing how easily you can read this. Anyway, so the personal name of God was the consonants YHWH. We think it was pronounced Yahweh. That would be a verb meaning he causes to be or he is. But over the course of the years, the people got very religious. And they didn't want to say God's name. So every time they saw those four consonants, they said the word Adonai, which is Lord. So, when they began to put vowel markings in, after Jerusalem was totally destroyed in 135 AD, destroyed right down to the ground, the city, the streets were reorganized. It was turned into a Roman city. No Jew could live in Judea on pain of death, and the Jews were scattered around the world. Well, they were worried. Is the little Chinese Jew having his bar mitzvah going to pronounce the text the same way the little Spanish Jew is having his bar mitzvah? We better put vowels in here. So what vowels did they put into this word? Martin Luther didn't know this. He's a good German. A lovely name for God that never existed. I always chuckle a bit when people talk about, oh, Jehovah Rapha. No. Now, you say, okay, so what's that all about? What that's about is you will know that I am Now, I don't know about you, but that says something different to me than you will know that I am. That says you'll know I'm the boss. That says you'll know I'm in charge. That says you'll know I'm running the show. This says you will know that I am the source of all existence. You will know that I am. It sounds a little bit like Dr. Seuss, but anyway. It's not just that he's in charge. Not just he's the boss. He is the basis of all existence. You will know that I am. So when you see that phrase, think about what Oswalt said. I'm Yahweh. I'm the source of everything. Those idols are the source of nothing. Those idols are the work of your hands. You are the work of my hands. All right, let's go on. Where's the next? Then you will know. Yeah, desolate waste. 7:4. When will you know then? You will know when I won't look at you, and when I surely repay you for your conduct. I want to talk more about that in a minute, but there it is. Once again, then verse 9, next one, same thing, isn't it? I won't look on you with pity. I won't spare you. I'll repay you for your conduct and for your abominations. Wow. And I think the next one is the end of the chapter. Is that right? Yes. And once again, I will deal with them according to their conduct. By their own standards, I'll judge them. Then they will know I am the Lord. Now, as I said in the background, without any question, this is referring back to the Exodus. When you've got about, depending on how you count it, about a dozen times between chapter 7 of Exodus and chapter 14 of Exodus, then typically it's they, the Egyptians, will know I'm the Lord. Couple of times when God does a miracle on the behalf of the people, you will know I am the Lord. But all those signs of the Exodus are signs of God's power to deliver. So here we are, crunch time. The mighty Assyrians have been wiped away by the Babylonians. It's like the Bengals have taken out the Kansas City Chiefs. And now we're face to face with these guys. Yipes. Well, what are we going to say? We will know God is the Lord when he delivers us from those rotten Babylonians. Ezekiel says, no. You will know I am Yahweh when I let the Babylonians have their way with you. And that's going to be true all the way through the first half of the book here. Then you will know appears, I think, 57 times in the book of Ezekiel. And about 30 of them are in the first half. When and notice that statement. When I repay you according to your conduct. And as I said, the Living Oswalt version, when I give you what you got coming to you. Now, what does that statement mean? We reap what we sow. This is a world of cause and effect. Choose God's way, and he will repay us according to our conduct. Choose abominations. But what I want to say here is, this is not arbitrary. This is not a heavenly tyrant saying, well, you can't do that to me. I'll show you. No. God says, for 1,000 years, I overlooked your conduct. For 1,000 years, I had compassion on you. For 1,000 years, I looked with pity on you. But there comes a day when causes will have their effects. And it's as though God says, I've been standing between you and the effects of your choices. Now I'm going to step aside. And what you've got coming to you is going to come. And I want you to keep this in mind as we go through these next 20 dark chapters. And God talks about his rage and his fury. He's not an arbitrary tyrant. He just finally can't go on. And in that regard, I want to call your attention to chapter 7. No, it's 6. Verse 9. Then in the nations where they have been carried captive, those who escape will remember me. How I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts, which turned away from me, and by their eyes, which have lusted after their idols. You see, the problem with God, the big problem with God, is you can't control him. And that's a pain. I want a God I can control. I want to put my quarter in and pull the handle and get $25. Isn't that interesting? They longed for Baal because you could give Baal a dead sheep and Baal would bring a thunderstorm 51% of the time. But Yahweh, you can give him dead sheep till you're sick and he may not send a rain. This God says, surrender your wants, your lusts, and trust me. Come on. Trust him. A God who is not the moon, who is not the stars, who's not the wind, who's not the rain. A God that I can't magically manipulate? Just trust him? Yeah. Back at Sinai, he said, marry me and trust me. And like an 18-year-old kid at the altar, they said, sure. And then life came along. I used to get so upset at my mother. She would say, honey, life is very daily. I know that, Mother. Yeah. And so it was with them. Yeah, it seemed like he could be depended upon, but it was kind of always at the last minute. I've been grieved by their adulterous hearts. Yeah. Yeah. I want to hedge my bets. Sure, Yahweh, I want to worship you, but I want to worship Baal too. So that if you don't produce, maybe he will. I want to hedge my bets. Have your cake and eat it too. And you demand exclusive allegiance, whether it works for me in my way or not. So God says, I'm going to step aside with a broken heart, with outraged feelings. I'm going to step aside and let you have the results of 1,000 years of choices. My prayer for myself is, Lord, please don't step aside. Please don't step aside. Now he says, in chapter 6, verse 10, they will know that I am the Lord. I did not threaten in vain to bring this calamity on them. What is one of the purposes of predictive prophecy?
Move people away from judgment.
You've been warned. And you know that he knew the future because he told you in advance. And when it happens, you know it's from him. Predictive prophecy is given to us basically for two reasons. Number one, to build our faith in him, that he knows the future, and then when it happens, to ground our faith knowing he did know the future. So, in uncertain times, God says, this is what's going to happen. All right? I'm going to live in faith that that in fact is so. And then comes the day. Ha! You knew! I'll trust you for the next step. Predictive prophecy is not given so that we can build a timetable. I love Francis Asbury's journal, one place where he says, Father Wesley believes that Jesus will come back in 1812. Myself, I think it'll be closer to 1839. For all of the failed timetables that have been created in the last 2,000 years, we ought to begin to get the picture that this is not what it's about. But you will know that I'm Yahweh when the thing that I've predicted here happens. When Babylon sweeps in here and takes Jerusalem down and leaves the land desolate, I told you. I told you. Wow. He must be Yahweh. Now, chapter 7, as you've seen it, is this gorgeous poem, gorgeously awful. But notice how it begins. I said 7:10 is a good topic sentence, but there's a sense in which 7:2 is also the same thing. What is this poem saying? What is it about? According to those two verses, 2 and 10. The end. This is it. We've come to the end of the story. I am going to allow you to get the results of your choices. And so throughout chapter 7, there's this, I'm going to repay you. But I want to say again, it is not an arbitrary tyrant. It is, I'm letting you have the result of your choices.
Is this similar to what Paul says in Romans, that they didn't believe, therefore I gave them over to you?
Exactly. It is the exact same thing. It is that I let them have what they wanted. They didn't know they wanted that, but by their choices they did want it. Yes. And there in Romans chapter 1, the thing that we've talked about here again, what are the consequences of making this world God? The consequences are that we destroy one another in our desires run loose.
you to get to verse 22 of 7.
Okay?
But I have to bring it up. And the reason is because when he talks about the images in 20, and the images of their abomination, which is of course the idol worshippers. But then, and then he said, I shall also turn my face from them, and they shall profane my secret place, and robbers will enter and profane it. Now, we bragged on that for a long time, but the thing I'm connecting it to is in, and I kind of went ahead, chapter 8, that these images have a demonic place, I guess, where he says the image of jealousy is there to provoke people to be jealous, you know, and so this verse here seems really profound to me, but
Yes.
I'm not really, you know, is that the heart, you know, is that the secret place in the heart?
Yes. Ultimately, it is here, of course, it's the secret place in the temple. They're going to go right into the Holy of Holies. And yes, I think you're right. We allow the enemy free access to the inner sanctum of our souls. And the result is disaster. Yeah. Notice verse 19. What are they depending on for deliverance? Money, silver and gold. Verse 20, what are they depending on? Beautiful jewelry. And they used it for detestable, abominable idols. So these things they depended upon, they have misused, and as a result of misusing them, they're going to lose them. I'll give their wealth, 21, as plunder to foreigners, as loot to the wicked of the earth, who will defile it.
The next verse, and will turn my face away from them.
Yes. I am the source of their strength. I am the source of their security. But they've rejected me, and I'll turn away. And the result is the robbers will desecrate the secret place. Yes. Notice again the progression in verses 26 and following. Calamity upon calamity will come, rumor upon rumor, and what will they do? They'll search for a vision from the prophet. Oops, that doesn't work. So where do they go next? The priests and the Torah. Well, that doesn't work. So where do they go next? The council of the elders. And where do they go next? The king and the prince. And ultimately we come down to whom? There in the middle of 27. The people of the land, the common people. So from top to bottom, there is no sense of direction, no word that they can turn to.
What does he mean here? He said that I will deal with them according to their conduct, and by their own standards I will judge.
Yes. Once again, their own standards is their own conduct. So they have chosen, where we're told back in chapter 5, I think, that they've chosen the standards of the world. They've chosen rather than the Torah, they've chosen the mishpatim, they've chosen the regulations of the world. And so God is saying, you want those regulations? I'll judge you by those. Homosexual behavior is okay? Okay, I'll judge you by that. And so it goes. So he says, you've made choices, so I'm going to give you what those choices result in. Okay. One more thing I want to call your attention to. Go back to verse 10, 7:10. Doom has burst forth. This is NIV here. The rod has budded, arrogance has blossomed. We can think of Aaron's rod. Remember that? When these guys, Dathan and Abiram, said, hey, look, we're as holy as Aaron is. They probably could have said, we're a little more holy than he is. So why should he be the representative of God in our midst? And God says, okay, tell them to bring their rods into the tabernacle and leave them there. Come back the next morning. Aaron's rod has budded, and theirs have not. There is life in Aaron because I am putting that life into him. I've chosen him for this purpose. So, again, I think Ezekiel is just soaked in the Exodus story. And so here it is again. But this time, it's not the blessing of God that has budded. What has budded? Pride. Pride has budded, and the blossom, the flower, is violence. Again, you choose the world, and you get the results. I am the king of the hill. And if you don't believe it, I got a fist big enough to make you believe it. Once again, you've chosen your ways. And now, I'm going to let you have the results. What that says to us, what it says to me, and I hope to you, is, Lord, I choose you. I choose your ways. I choose to live for you. Whatever the cost, whatever the price, confident in you and confident that your Spirit, as the text says in another place, can make us blossom even in old age. That's the God we serve. That's the God we serve. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, once again, we thank you for your word. Dark words, painful words, and yet words that we know are divine truth. Help us, Lord. Help us not to make you in our image, but through your Holy Spirit, make us in your image. Make us like you in the way we treat one another. Make us like you in the way we treat the world.